Hey guys, welcome to our 1 hour webinar. This is going to be a fully comprehensive 1 hour session to show you guys how much I can add value to your Ableton Live 11, 10 or 9 process, and how we can help you take your production skills to the next level, and show you some new workflow techniques, how to use some audio effects, how to layer your drums, and use sidechain compression. What is sidechain compression? Where to find reverb, stuff like that. So we're just going to be covering some of the basics, and you will learn something for sure in this hour. And yeah, we're going to be using making a track as the vehicle for the hour, and then we're just going to see how much I can help you, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it, and then you can check out the course after. So let's get into it. First part of the hour session, I like to start my track the same way every single time. This way I kind of build a routine and muscle memory, and the habits of making a track are kind of ingrained into me, and I don't have to think too much about the process. It doesn't take as much energy as if I was doing something different every time, and I've found the best way by far to make a track quickly, effectively, and make it sound good so it's successful. By successful I mean you like it, your listener likes it, it gets played on the radio, it makes you royalties, makes you happy, helps you advance your career as a DJ, and advance your career as a music producer, and just give you more life satisfaction. So the first thing we do, you're welcome to grab a notepad at this point, and you're welcome to write down each step as we go along. So the first step of the hour that we're going to do is simple. We're going to find a kick drum that we like. So a good kick drum is going to have a transient, a body, and a tail. So these are the three parts of a kick drum. The transient is the click, the start part. The body is the bass content of the kick, and the tail is the release, the length of the kick, and any kind of after effects like reverb. So we want something that's going to punch through on a real club sound system. So we're going to get a nice punchy kick with a little bit of a click to it, but not too clicky, and a nice tail, but not too long. So how do we know what that looks like? Well, with audio, we can drag the sample into our project session, and we'll be able to see for ourselves what that looks like, but the best way is to use your ears and hear what a good kick sounds like. So we're going to be looking for a kick drum for the first part of the hour session. So we're going to go to our drums. So I'm going to show you how to do that with MIDI, and I'm going to show you how to do that with audio. So first things first, I'm going to go to my favourite drum machine, drum kit, the 909. Just going to drag that in to a MIDI track. Okay, so we don't need all these audio tracks. I'm just going to hit backspace to get rid of those. And yeah, welcome, and I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with you guys and showing you some of the basics and how we do some effective things. So the 909 core kit, we're just going to create a new MIDI window by double left clicking, and this is going to create a MIDI window which looks like this. We can then make that longer by going to the top of the MIDI window and extending it out like so. If we right click, we can consolidate the clip, which will make it the length of this. So we'll just keep it at 1 bar for now. And then we can see our piano roll here where we've got our drums. So we've got 1 bar, second beat, third beat, fourth beat, and then there'd be 2 bars there. So with most dance music, we have a 4x4 pattern, which you can change up here if you want to make jazz or any interpretive dance music. You can change the time signature up here you can have 4x2, 4x4, 4x8, and that will change the metrics, the system of the bars. I would recommend keeping it on 4x4 if you're making anything like house or techno, drum and bass, anything like that. But if you want to make something a bit more interpretive and different, you can do that. Just be aware it's not going to be so DJ friendly and probably won't get played by any DJs in a club. So, but you're welcome to experiment. So we're going to set our beats per minute, which is up here. This is the speed of the track. Okay, so we're going to program our kick drum, which is down here. Let's get the volume up a bit. Okay. Perfect. So we've got our kick drum here. So how do we program that kick drum? How do we get the kick drum from the sound into our project? So we're firstly going to double left click here to create a MIDI note in our piano roll, which looks like that. So now if we press play, we have a kick drum. That's great. So now we need to program it by time. So we're just going to extend this out, and we can draw more kick drums, or we can press Command D to duplicate those kick drums. And we have that basic house pattern now. So we have our kick drum, the bass drum, it's on every beat of the bar. And we're going to extend this out now, like this. And we're just going to duplicate this. So we're going to highlight, Command D, duplicate. Another way to extend this further, as you can see, if I'm extending the MIDI clip at the top, it's not adding any more notes, which can be frustrating. So we're going to click the loop button here in the clip window, and it's going to loop this section. So if I was to extend, now we have MIDI notes, so that's going to save you some time. So we have our kick drum now. And then we're going to drag a 909 kit again, and we're going to keep all of the drums separate so we can process them individually. There are ways around that. So if I wanted to put a clap on this rack, for example, if I was to, let's say, saturate this rack or compress it, it would add compression and saturation to both the kick drum and the clap, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But if I wanted to just add saturation to the kick drum, I'd grab the saturator from our results or our audio effects rack, and then just put it on the bass drum in the drum rack, which is this grid system here with different instruments. And now we've put the saturator just on the bass drum, it's not going to affect the rest of the rack. So the clap doesn't have a saturator on it, but the bass drum does. So that's how we can individually process elements of a drum rack. But for now, I'm just going to keep it simple and have a different track for each drum, just because I prefer it, and that's how we're going to go about it moving forward. So I'm going to drag my 909 kit again, and then we're going to make a new MIDI track, a clip by double left clicking, and then we're just going to program our clap. So we're just going to get a bar's worth of MIDI, consolidate that, and on every second beat we're going to have a clap like this. I'm using the arrow key as you can drag the sound. You can also change the velocity of the sound. So if we click this, we're going to open the velocity window, this little button here, the yellow button. And then if we were to highlight an element and then drag it down, it's going to make that element quieter, lower the velocity. So we can kind of like create a humanized groove. but we'll leave it at about 100, and then that's our clap. And then we're going to double left click, use the loop trick that I showed you guys earlier. Now we're going to process our hi-hats. So we're just going to get another 909 kit, and we're just making a basic drum groove here. Consolidate this. And we're going to start with an open hi-hat. We can make this a bit shorter, so I'm using shift and the left and right arrows to make the drum longer and shorter. So we could duplicate this along and have like a rhythmic pattern. Or we can have it just playing. And you see all these individual elements are separate, but if we were to highlight them all, we could press Command J or Alt J if you're on a PC, Command J for Mac, and then we press that, and then we get a consolidated clip of hi-hats. So this is our little 8-bar section. So we've got our bars up here, we've got 9 bars, 8 full bars, and if we highlight this using left click, I'm just going to highlight these notes. And then once we've done that, if we right click, we can create a loop section, and then that will just play this on repeat, so we can kind of brainstorm ideas of what we want to do next. Now seems like a suitable time to talk about sidechain, so that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 9 or so minutes. So sidechain is a form of compression. You can find a compressor in the audio effects section of categories. And we're just going to type in compressor. Here we have the compressor under the dynamics section in Ableton Live 11. We're going to drag the compressor onto our hi-hats. There is a glue compressor, which we would use for groups of drums. We'll look into groups later, and glue compression later on. There's also multiband dynamics with multiband compression, which looks like this. So there's 3 bands. You've got your high band, middle band, and low band. And it splits frequencies, so you can compress just the low end. The mids, the highs, we'll look at that later. So we're just going to look at basic compression for now. I'm going to save this as our preset. So this is what a compressor looks like in Ableton. The stock compressor is really good, so you don't need to worry too much about forking out for external VSTs, unless I recommend them. There's a lot of VSTs out there, and the stock Ableton plugins actually do a lot of good stuff. So, you know, we'll talk about plugins later. So we're looking at compression now and side chaining. So if I was just to compress these hi-hats, this is what it would sound like. As we run a sound through the compressor, we're actually going to lower the threshold, and there's going to be GR, which is gain reduction, and that means less volume. And then the output, we can actually tweak the volume. So this is our audio effects rack, so it's actually running from left to right. So we've got this, which is our instrument, then we've got our chorus, then we've got our compressor. So to activate sidechain compression, we can actually move these around as well. You might want the compressor before the chorus, so if we click this window, we're going to open sidechain compression, and then we can send the audio from the hi-hats to our core kit. So if you don't know which one is the kick drum, we can go over here to the right by the track selection. We can click rename and then call this the kick. Or we can call it the bass drum. And we can rename this and call it the clap. can rename this and call it the open hi-hat. Okay, so now it's a bit more simple to route the compressor and sidechain the hi-hats to the bass drum. So our playhead here, if we want to follow it, we just click this button up here in the top left, and then once it goes yellow, it will actually follow the playhead like this. So another good little tip and trick. And we just take that off. So the sidechain, the compressor will actually sidechain the hi-hat so that every time the kick hits, it will duck the hi-hat's signal, and then that will result in the hi-hats being quieter when the kick hits, so the kick drum can punch through the mix a bit more. So if this is enough value for you guys, you're welcome to get the course of the Ableton Workflow Academy course. It's 26 hours long. It's over 100 lessons, and you can get it on the website. But I'll keep teaching you guys throughout this webinar and keep adding value, just so you guys know that what you're getting is worth it, which is fine. So we've made a drum groove with MIDI. We're now going to use audio. So we're going to delete all of this. Now we're going to press Command T to make a new audio track. So with audio, we actually need samples. So we're going to go to our places and get some audio samples from earlier. We're going to be using we're going to use this Deep House pack. Or we have some Tech House hits from our website, which we can use. These are also audio samples. So we have our kick drum, which we're just going to drag in, and then we can just drag our kick drums like this, and then we've got our groove. So we can drag the kick drums in, but I'll show you a quicker way of doing things, just so you guys can save time and have more fun in the studio. And then let's say we can have a double kick here. So I actually prefer working with audio because it's a bit quicker to program and it can sound a lot better than MIDI. So we've got our drum loop, which sounds like this. So if we wanted to extend that along, we could duplicate it like this, pressing Command D, and press Command Z to undo. Or we can highlight this and then right click and then consolidate, Command J, and it's going to turn the kick drum into a loop. So it still sounds like this. So it sounds the same, but if we double left click on the audio clip, the playhead at the top, we get the clips menu again, and we can just click loop, and then we can loop that out, and that will save you hours and hours of time. And now we have an 8-bar loop of kick drums. And very similar to MIDI, but now we have different things we can do, like change the pitch of the kick drum. So that's cool. Something people ask me a lot is, how do I know what key my kick drum is in? So it's important to know the key of your kick drum because it's one of the driving bass factors of your track. And if it's not in key with your piano and vocals, it's going to sound very not musical, and it's going to sound off, and you'll be able to hear that it's not in key. So I'll include a Camelot wheel in the resources of this webinar, and then you can click on that and you can print that out and put that in your room, and it will let you know what's in key with what. So another way to figure out what the key is of our kick drum is if we go to the tuner. So we're just going to type tuner in, and then this is going to be an audio effect under utilities, and then we just drag that on, and then we have a tuner. So I don't know if you just saw that B flash up there. But basically it tells us what key our kick drum is in. So we saw the kick drum is in B, and then we could transpose that. Each semitone will change a note. So if we go up a note, it'll be C, D, E, F, G, etc. And then if we go down, it'll be A. And yeah, so that's how you tell the key of your kick drum using a tuner. Now we're going to be processing the clap. So we're going to get an audio clap from one of our sample packs. This one's nice and reverby. So we'll shorten that and turn that into a loop like this. So if you guys didn't catch how I did that, you're like, wait, what? He just did that in like a second. So we're just going to grab our audio from the sample pack, which is up here. You just left click and you can audition. If we wanted this little flappy one, we just drag that in like this. We could even have variations. So like, you know, there's no rules really in music production, so you could just drag different sounds on. For example, you don't normally hear that in a track, two different claps like that, but you know, like I said, there's no rules, so it sounds pretty good, so we could keep it. So one thing we could do is drag them in one by one or duplicate them. But like I said, if you just highlight the selection and then Command J, consolidate, you get it as a clip, and then you can loop that clip, and then that clip becomes a loop, and you can do this. So, you know, why wouldn't you? But whatever suits your workflow, of course. You can also pitch your claps to get some interesting textures. Which is interesting. And of course you can change the gain of the sound here, which is visually represented by audio. Another reason I prefer to use it, it's all very visual. So you can do all sorts of stuff there. And just double left click and you can reset the pitch or whatever. And you can also type in this box, you know, what you want the pitch to be. 34 minus 12 or 23. There you go. And something you can do with claps is you can double the speed or slow them down by clicking these buttons here. Which is essentially turn them into hi-hats. or you can double them. Which is interesting. You could do that if you wanted to stretch the sample out, or if you're struggling with creative ideas and you wanted to try something new. It tends to bend the sound and make it longer, which you can hear, and kind of time stretches it a bit, so you get some great sounds with that, on like a vocal or a pad. Cool. So we were talking about loops earlier. So what is a loop? We've been dragging in one shots. So these are just one shots. So now we're going to go to another pack. It comes with loops. Let's go to this one, for example. And then if we click on drum loops, we get all sorts of loops here. So if I click on these loops, this stands for stripped. So kind of similar to what we've got already. So we could delete everything we've got and then drag in this stripped. And now it's all in one. So it's a kick and a clap in one loop. But if we press Command Z, we undo it, we get it back. Cool. So as you notice, we're missing hi-hats. So what we're actually going to do is drag a top loop, which is going to be just top elements like hi-hats and shuffly swing stuff. I'm going to drag that in now. And this seems like a good point in the track to save. So we're going to press Command S to save. And we're going to save this track as trial. So yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying the webinar so far. You probably haven't noticed, but I've had to take breaks. So I actually went to the toilet. Every 10 minutes roughly, I'm pausing it just to make sure nothing's getting corrupted. So I hope the ebb and flow of the webinar is fine. The course, the lessons are recorded fully, so there's a bit more of a flow there, and it's obviously ordered in chronological order, so time order. But yeah, so we've got our drum groove now. So what I'm going to do next is make a bass line. So we're going to make a bass line using MIDI first, and then we're going to make a bass line using audio. So there's a few ways to do this. The audio interface, which is 100% covered in our course. I explain everything, what every button does here, every nook and cranny, session view, live view. But we're going to make a bass line now. So we're just going to find basses that we like. Going to drag this one in, the wobble bass, sounds cool. And if your track is armed, you can click this button up here in the top right, and you actually can turn your keyboard to trigger the synthesizer, which sounds really cool. So yeah, I have a synthesizer, cool. And then we can just draw notes. I'm actually going to consolidate this clip and just start jamming. And just kind of imagining where notes would go. So something you can do here is click scale, and you'll actually see what notes are in key with your project. So C major, these notes are all in C major because they're highlighted. So we can just have that on. We're just going to get a nice rhythm that we like. Cool, let's hear it again. So that's sounds interesting, so we can duplicate that along now. And I'm just thinking about rhythm and the notes bouncing off each other, so you can check if it's in key using the scale, so you don't need any music theory. As you can see, everything is in C major. I'm just writing little notes. You know, some of the best tracks are written on 3-4 notes, so don't worry about the complexity as much as the vibe and how it sounds. That's what it's all about, really. Cool. So I'm going to consolidate this and loop it, and then I can change it whenever I want. Cool. So if we go to our sound, there's all sorts of stuff that we can change here. We're not going to look into that now because I don't want to overwhelm you. But we're just going to keep jamming. So then I just click the filter there just to see what it would do. It activates a second filter, don't really want it, so I'll leave it off. But we have our bass line and our drum groove now, so let's look at extending this out into, we could extend it out, or we could keep building on this loop. So basically going to keep building on the loop until we've got something that we're happy with, and then extend it out into something else. So I have a pack here, female vocal hooks. You can get any vocals from Music Workflow Academy. There's a few vocal packs on there. And I'm just going to get like a nice vocal, really, and just drag it in, and we'll see. Something that we could do is, if we make a new MIDI track, I'll teach you something new here. If we drag the vocal into our MIDI track, it's going to instantly make a sampler, a simpler. So if we make a MIDI clip now, we turn that vocal into a piano. So rewind that if you didn't catch it. We basically got the one shot, turned it into a piano. So we could even play it live, but I'm just gonna program it in now. See what that sounds like. And then now we can just extend that out. So we're editing our loop. There's a few things we can do. So we can extend that out now into a full track. So we're just going to highlight this. Command D, duplicate along. We're just going to keep going, and then we've got our time. You know, let's say 2 minutes. If that's all that you can handle, we'll just say 2 minutes. But it doesn't make sense, so we'll go for a finished track, which is about 3 minutes 30, technically. And I'm going to make a MIDI template now to show you guys the arrangement of what we're doing. So this is the next part. We've done our sample selection, so kind of got like arrangement now. I'm just going to call this intro, so it's a MIDI clip, and then drop, or build up. Let's have a 32 bar intro, and then a 32 bar drop, then a breakdown, then a drop, then a breakdown, then outro. Cool. So we've got 2 drops, 2 breakdowns, and an outro. So let's drag everything that we've got along, because it's all looped. We can just drag it or duplicate it, which is fine. So that sounds cool, looks cool. Alright, so we've got our arrangement up here. This is a template that I will include in the resources of the webinar. And I'm just changing the color of each clip here so that you can visually see where you are in the track creating process, and just so you know what is required in that part of the track creating process. So obviously if it's a drop, you want high energy bass lines. If it's a breakdown, you want kind of chilled out stuff, pads. So although we've got a couple layers here, we've got a nice basis for what we want. So something that's bugging me is I want to put a filter onto this bass line just to make it a bit warmer. So I'm going to type in auto and then get a auto filter, put that on the bass line, and then just change the frequency so that I'm cutting off anything above 1K. And that's more of a subby bass line, which is practical right now because it's a bit annoying. And then the vocals as well, I'm going to put an auto filter on the vocals, cut off, make it a bit darker. So I'm happier with that. Now we have our intro. You know, we're going to be using drums. The drop is the bass line, so we'll leave the bass line for the drops. And then the breakdown, we might add a pad. So you can go off the grid here. You can make the track as long as you want. You can add as many elements as you want. If you don't want a bass line, don't add a bass line. If you don't want claps, don't have claps. That's fine. So I'm just going to delete the bass line from everything that's not the drop, which you can see here. And I don't want the bass line in the outro either. So this is what we've got. So that's our intro. So I'm going to shape the intro into something that gradually builds into the drop. So we're going to look at automations now. This is where you guys might get lost a bit, but it's all in the course. It will, yeah, anyway. Just get the course basically. So right now we're automating the reverb of the track, so it's sending reverb and basically just making the track more interesting as we go along. I'm going to get rid of the kick drums here, and that's just going to, you know, for the breakdown and stuff, and just add a bit of tension, because when the kick goes, so there's a lot of the bass content, and then when the bass comes back with the kick, it kind of punches the audience in the face, and that's always good. So I'm going to add the top loop in at 9 bars, but I'm going to automate the volume so that it builds up into the drop to make it a bit more interesting. Like this, and you can curve automation lines by holding Option. Hope you guys are enjoying and learning. Just getting to the fun bit now. I'm actually going to start to tease the bass line there as well by doing some volume automations like this. You can also highlight here, right click, and then you get shapes, but it's all about developing your own style really in music production. Don't copy everything I do, you know, get your own ideas, because that way you're not just going to sound like me, you're going to sound a bit different, and that's one of my unique selling points is I sound like myself. I don't try and sound like other artists, and that will take you a lot further if you just put the work in and passion. But teaching you the building blocks today, everything you need to know to be a successful producer really quickly. So, you know, hope it's a character building exercise. So that's it basically. And now we're just going to fill in our track with some effects for the last few bits of the session. So we've got SFX here, so sound effects. So we've got a riser, which we're going to use to build up into the drop. Just going to drag that in. And that just elevates the tension a bit and rolls the listener nicely into the drop. Just save that footage, make sure it doesn't corrupt, and we're going to go into that drop now. So that's cool. We'll put that before each drop. And to add some variation, if we just double click on that, you can obviously have different sound effects, but if you change the pitch, it'll actually sound completely different. Pretty cool. And we can put an auto filter on that to make it a bit darker. I like my tracks nice and dark. So just drag the auto filter onto there. Roll off some of the high end. Keep this LFO off. This is on by default for me. And then we can add a impact effect, so similar to a white noise riser. We have an impact effect, so that sounds like that's what it would sound like. So we'll put this on another track, and we're putting this on the drop, so it's going to add impact to the drop. And I like our bass line, but if we wanted to change it for something else, we could always do that. So you can always just swap the sounds out. Something like that, maybe. That's actually quite cool. We can also take it down a few octaves. So I prefer that actually by quite a lot. However, it's not beefy enough, so we're going to see what we can add to make this a bit wider. So I'm going to use a saturator on the bass line here. A bit warmer is a really good preset to use because it uses the Synoid fold shape, which is my favourite shape for saturator. So if you're going to use that to save some more time, if you right click, oh, high quality, you want to enable that, and then you can save that as the preset. It's not really getting the shape or sound that I want, so we can actually go into wave shaper here. Shape ourselves. That's kind of the sound that we like. So listening back, it's actually kind of could use some more movement. So what we can do is add a percussive element in here to make it more interesting. So we're going to go into this pack. It's always good to have a few sample packs. You can get them on musicworkflowacademy.com, and you see these perk ones. It's not a very good one, but we'll go back into the Sleazy Deep House. Let's see, something like that, and we'll just throw that on the drop. It's just going to give it a bit more movement. And the LFO is a low frequency oscillator, so that's actually going to spin the filter so it moves the start and end point, which is going to give it more movement. So we're just going to have that, and then I'm going to have it coming in on the 17th bar, but the volume will kind of go like that. And I'll do the same thing for the breakdown, where it's like a bit quieter. Yeah. And these breakdowns are quite empty, so I'm going to add some pads here. Let's see what pad sounds we've got. That's lovely. So just going to loop that out. See what it sounds like. And something we can do is if we right click here, we can get split stereo pan mode. It's going to pan to the left and to the right. And to make these breakdowns a bit more interesting, I can send some delay to them using automation and the send and return tracks, which I'll explain to you now. Something like that. And then we'll curve that loop. Perfect. So the send and return tracks, turn off automation view, which can be accessed here. we're going to, so we've got A, reverb, and B, delay, and this minus INF is A, this minus INF is B, so we can send reverb and send delay like that, which is really easy to do. I feel like we could add some variation in this second segment. So I'm going to add, maybe change the pad just to make it a bit more interesting. Sounds better. I could also take this vocal down an octave. Or I could shorten the notes and duplicate them. And in Ableton 11, if you click this Randomize button, you actually change the velocities randomly of the vocal sample. And something I like to do is have like gradual building automations through the track. So we'll have this building of delay through the track, and then that's actually going to just give that feeling of evolving and constantly increasing. For the outro, we're just going to kind of gently come out of this and just try and transition out of it. So let's do that. Gradually getting rid of elements. So we're just going to add some stuff now to beef up the track a bit. Let's try this. Wacky effects in there. This might work. If we press R on a note, it's going to reverse it. This sounds good, adds a lot of atmosphere. this as well. So I've just added this little FX loop line that I've made just to make it a bit more interesting. A bit of ear candy for the listener. Cut out the low end of it as well, just for effect. Sounds like a horn. Anyway guys, that's the end of the webinar. I hope you've seen the value that I can add to you as a music producer. If you liked that, that's just a taste. There's plenty more where that came from. If you get the course, enroll today, you get hundreds of resources and 30-day money back guarantee, and over 100 lessons for you to enroll in, and you can learn in your own time. So yeah, thanks guys for listening, and I'll see you in the course. Peace.